Of course, these protests have been about George Floyd's death, but they also have been about the black men and women who lost their lives well before this and the systemic racism in America. New media founder Roland Martin is here now for more on what led to this moment and where we are headed. Roland, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So as you know, 3 additional officers were charged in relation to George Floyd's death today, and Officer Chauvin's murder charge was also upgraded. But is it too little too late? Or do you think that the protesters are going to continue to crowd the streets?
Yes, the protests will continue because it's not just about the officers who killed George Floyd. It is about how America refuses to deal with how we handle police. Perfect example, yesterday, Governor Andrew Cuomo criticizes police in New York for their response. What happens? The chief gets upset, goes off. You owe us an apology. He comes out today. Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't talking about the officers. I was talking about the supervisors. The problem we have in this country is that you don't know who runs cities. Is it the elected officials or is it the cops? And so they seem to be untouchable. Look at Atlanta. The chief came out today and said at the firing of the 6 officers who were involved in the grabbing of the black students from Morehouse and Spelman, oh, they were political. Wait a minute, did you not see the video, the body camera video? And so people are fed up with how people are so afraid to challenge rogue cops. That's the problem in this country. You do not have enough accountability when it comes to police.
But for people who are looking at the protesters and they say, wow, this is all because of George Floyd, give us a snapshot of how we got to this moment.
It's not because of George Floyd. First of all, the people who are sitting here don't realize that the modern day police departments were born out of slave patrols. People don't understand where did the Second Amendment come from. That was born out of what? Giving folks protections in terms of exactly what? In terms of guarding people, okay? Going back to how the Constitution was created. How did people in the South during the slavery utilize these same laws to target African Americans? So now you go through the years, this tension that has existed between black folks and police departments, this is not new. This goes back to the 1800s and the 1900s. Even when you go through the era of Jim Crow, when you go back to most race riots in the 20th century, nearly all race riots were preceded or ignited by cases of police brutality. We can go on and on and on. In King's speech, the I Have a Dream speech on August 28, 1963, he references police brutality. In his book, Chaos or Community, Where Do We Go From Here, which every person should have a copy of. In this book, this was a response to the race riots in '67. He talks about police brutality, economic injustice. And so the people who somehow think this is new have been in denial. In Philadelphia, they tore down the statue of Frank Rizzo. They took it down because folks had defaced it. Why? This was you put up a statue of a man who was the mayor for 8 years, who had one of the most brutal police departments in American history. He was the northern version of Bull Connor, and there was a statue in his honor. That's what people are tired of. Centuries, decades of police brutality and them simply being unaccounted for.
You've, of course, been an outspoken critic of President Trump's, especially when it comes to his recent responses to police brutality and protesting. What should leaders be doing right now to unite Americans? And let me also pose the title of the book that's in your hand back to you. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, look, here's the deal that you're dealing with right now. It has to be massive. It has to be a response from a federal government, state governments, and local government. And so when you talk about federal government, you have to strip these departments, these police officers, of this blanket protection. You have these states that have Bill of Rights, where pretty much how things are guaranteed. Even in Minneapolis, you already have the police union saying, wait a minute, they didn't get their full rights. You were not supposed to fire them after a certain period of time. People don't even understand, Linsey. If there are rules out there that where if a cop is engaged in wrongdoing, even a shooting, they don't have to immediately give a statement. They can wait 3, 4, 5 days. In some cases, they have the right to actually go and look at the body camera footage before they give a statement. Until the law was changed last year, in the state of Georgia, a police officer had the right to sit in grand jury proceedings. Those are supposed to be private. And so think about it. Linsey, you're going to go testify against a police officer in the grand jury. If it was Roland involved, Roland can't sit in. But if it was a police officer, he or she gets to sit there and watch you testify. That's grossly intimidating. There has to be massive change to the laws in this country and also changing these contracts. These cities are also negotiating. People have no idea that the law is simply set up to where they can do whatever they want. And when it comes to deadly force, all they have to say is, my life was in danger. Guess who said that? Joe Serpico, who took down the New York Police Department. We have a fundamental problem with how we look at police in this country. Am I saying all cops are bad? Nope. But what I am saying is there has to be fundamental changes from the city, the county, the state, and the federal level. It's a whole bunch of work to do, and the public is saying enough is enough.
What's the first reform? What's the first change that you would make?
Well, it all depends on what level it is. And so right now you have Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, as Joe Biden alluded to in his speech the other day, who's working on a massive police accountability bill. That needs to be moving on the federal level. Then you need to have, in all of these state legislatures, you need to be having things moving in those places as well. Then you must have these mayors and city councils and city managers redefining, use of force laws and procedures. And also, here's one of the deals. Louisville, David McAdee, black guy, barbecue owner, was shot and killed by the cops in Louisville. Guess what? The mayor fired the police chief because none of the cops had their body cameras on. I have long said, if a police officer turns off their dash cam video, automatically being fired. If they don't turn on their body cameras, automatically fired. If a police officer lies on a police report, automatically fired. I had the Fulton County DA, Paul Howard, on my show yesterday. He told me that in that video they shot grabbing the kids out, one of the officers pulled a gun out and they caught it on body cam. Another officer said, put that down. The guy who pulled the gun out, later, an officer said, why'd you pull your gun out? This is exactly what he told the officer. Because they flashed guns at us. The two students, not a single gun was in the car. We know from Laquan McDonald, Linsey, how the cops lied about Laquan McDonald, how they lied about how he did it. And you know what they did? The other cops then lied. And so in Chicago, a judge excoriated the cops and also the police oversight board because he said, I know cops have sat on my witness stand and lied on the stand. You cannot reward people who don't tell the truth. If you and I lie on a police report, we can be brought up on charges. If you're a cop, you get off scot-free. All those things must be happening at the same time. It can't be federal here, then we'll get to it. No, it has to be federal moving, state moving, county moving, city moving, and departments moving. We must have a complete reformation of how we deal with law enforcement in the United States, because this is not just a big city issue and an issue here, issue there. This is widespread across America.
Roland Martin, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.